they're asking themselves the question, how is it in the wake of this controversy we respond with armored vehicles, with militarization, as opposed to explanation, conversation, community engagement?
That was, again, Cornell William Brooks speaking at the time for the NAACP about the so-called militarized response when the police showed up in riot gear and they were having urine and rocks and who knows what else tossed at them. Chief, I remember when the program first started up that local police departments were allowed to take control of some former military equipment, in some cases, some vehicles with some bulletproof armored siding and stuff on them. Because if you get a standoff at a house and there's somebody shooting at you, your primary response is the safety of your officers. Why would you not want a piece of equipment like that?
You absolutely would. You know, we were in deadly force situations there every single night, and we didn't hurt anybody.
Right.
But we also made sure that the officers protected themselves. And if you think about why police departments were getting those vehicles, that's in the wake of Littleton, Colorado. Those that were looking at active shooter incidents, what police officers were primarily training for, you know, the extra training they were doing was active shooter training, how to go into a situation where there is an active shooter, someone who is shooting at that time, and to be able to move towards him quickly and take him down before other people are killed, as is, you know, the situation in Littleton, Colorado, that went on and on for so long. And police departments wanted to respond to that, you know, and train for that. So these weren't military vehicles in the sense they were being used to overpower any crowd. You know, they never did. They used the tear gas, which was perfectly safe, by the way.
Right. Well, I guess from that standpoint, you should have put down the riot shields as well, because didn't they use those during the Dark Ages? Didn't they use shields back then?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's rough stuff there. You got to be careful. So the whole militarization, that was a national effort to somehow change policing in America. To suggest somehow that our police should be made less safe because the people that are attacking them don't have access to that same equipment. That almost seems to have been the nonsense argument they were making.
It was a nonsense argument. When you think about it, these folks were destroying the city.
Sure.
People couldn't go to work. Kids couldn't get into school. Businesses had to close because the streets were blocked. And it's not the responsibility of the police department in cases like that to just go out and coddle and cajole. We got to restore order, and that's what we needed to do. And people those were all citizens too. I mean, most of them, not of Ferguson, but they're
right.
So as citizens, they have a responsibility to keep order themselves. It's not a one-sided thing.
My favorite snapshot in the aftermath of all of that was the business where the owners were standing outside the front door and up on the roof with their AR-15s guarding their property so nobody would come in. You know, You hate that it had to come to that they felt that they had to go out there and protect their property themselves. But, I mean, ultimately, I think that was around the same time that the National Guard was not brought in quickly enough in the aftermath of the decision not to charge.
Oh, yeah, they were not brought in at all that night, although they came in, did maneuvers around 2 a.m. so that the governor could lie and say that they were there. But, you know, they wanted to be there. We knew those guys. But, yeah, it was just a terrible thing. But the people that armed themselves and protected their property, they were okay. Because, you know, you get your place burned once, you're not going to let it happen again.
Oh, sure. No, absolutely. Let me get to a couple of more phone calls here real quick. Phil, thanks for holding on.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Mark.
Yes, sir.
I have a question for Police Chief Jackson. Any town, any county, any city in this state that you're walking down the double yellow line on a traveled public road, is that legal?
Well, no. You have to cross the road. There's actually pedestrian statutes and ordinances as well. But this was in a street that went through. It wasn't West Florissant. It wasn't a divided highway or anything. It was just a concrete roadway that went through the apartment complex. And there was going to be an ambulance coming through. So, no, they can't block the ambulance. It was not legal.
I understand. But they were walking down the middle of the road.
Yes, they were. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, pedestrians can cross the road, but they're not supposed to walk in the middle of it.
Common sense tells you, if I go walk down a public street down the middle of a road and a policeman pulls up on me and tells me, "What are you doing? Get off the road." Number one, you're endangering your life. You're endangering other people's lives that are driving on that road that may have to swerve and hit something else and hurt themselves. Some people don't want to follow the law, and we all know where they're at in North County. It's bull.
Well,
we all
Phil,
support you, policemen. We all support every one of you. Just take that to heart. There's a lot more of us out here that support you than guys that just called you a little bit ago and said he was walking legally down the middle of a road.
Well,
God
Phil,
bless you.
Yeah, thank you for the call. I mean, yeah, I think that's just part of the whole false narrative that we've gotten into here with what happened about that case, and some of those minds are never going to be changed, no matter if they investigated this 10 more times and found no reason to charge Darren Wilson, as I believe they would if they investigated it 10 more times. And that's the reality we live in today. Speaking of which, Mayor James Knowles has joined us here in the studio. After being cut free from the Jamie Allman program over there on TV, we got the second dibs here on the mayor. How are you?
Good. And well, then I got stopped in the hall by Chet Plebin.
Oh, did you?
So we were out there litigating this entire issue. So.
I understand.
And he's a great attorney and got great insight on this. And I wish we would have had him on our side on the case.
36 months after this happened, where's Ferguson today, in your opinion?
You know what? We still have our struggles, but overall, as a community, as a city, I think we're doing very well. We're in a good place. We still have a lot of great police officers who have stayed with us for many years, who continue to be with the department. We have a number of great staff members who have stuck it out through this entire ordeal, and our citizens. I mean, we did not see a mass exodus of either businesses or people, from our community. We've got a stable business base in our community. We've got rising property values. I just found that out on my last assessment from Mr. Zimmerman. So that's a good thing, but it hurts the pocketbook a little bit. But those are all great indicators that the city is doing well. Obviously, there's things that we still have to work on. We've got some development that we've been working on for some time, especially along the West Florissant corridor that has its hurdles. But this day is obviously always a day that's a little brings back a lot of mixed emotions and memories for a lot of residents. But at the same time, looking back to what we've gone through and where we're at today, I think it's a tremendous sign of the resiliency of this community. Yeah,
the discussion immediately after this, particularly from the Department of Justice point of view, is that there were policies in place that were designed to hurt people who were socio and economically disadvantaged. The elected officials didn't reflect the diversity of the community. Now you've gone through a couple of at least one election cycle since then, if not two.
We've gone through three.
Right?
The entire city council today has stood for election since the Michael Brown incident. So, I mean,
as did you,
as did I.
Right.
So nobody can say that these people are not the democratically elected, little d Democrat, elected will of the voters. I've been in office now from councilman to mayor for going on 13 years. One of the largest landslides that I've won by in my 13 years, just this past April. It's the second highest turnout by half a percentage point in the history of Ferguson. That's, I think people who still say, these guys are not representative, they're not, that somehow it's not reflective of the community. It's what the community wants, which I think was always kind of a red herring even before.
Right. Chief Jackson and I came in, we talked about this, about his book the other day. Mm-hmm. You said that when it seemed pretty obvious that when the Department of Justice couldn't go after Darren Wilson, they couldn't find the evidence that they needed, they turned their civil rights division loose on the city looking for problems. Isn't that the conclusion you reached in your book?
That's exactly right. They don't operate any rules. So they went out into an area where there was protesters and agitators from all over the country and asked them to talk bad about Ferguson Police Department. But our residents are, they were steadfast. It's like they had another tornado came through, lasted for 6 months, and then left, and then now rebuilding what we had, because we had 9 neighborhood associations in there, and people had complete access to me, the city manager John Shaw, to Mayor Knowles, and the city at that time was doing extremely well, bringing in business and high satisfaction, as written in a University of Missouri annexation study that showed us having a very high favorable rating in all our departments.
Right. And so, Chief, you now live under that consent decree, and I'm going to face a little time constraint here in a minute, but what's that meant for the city, having to exist under this thing now?
Me, you wanted me?
Yeah, please.
You said Chief.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
No,
sorry.
well, I mean, yeah, it's. I think what a lot of people don't like about this is there were a lot of, and while Chief was still in office, or Chief was still with Ferguson, we made a tremendous number of changes with the way we did things in courts, put some new things in place that I think would have been very helpful going forward. In the end, they wanted us to put it in a consent decree and put us under the guise of a federal monitor to say that we would do the things that we did. Bring in body cameras, that was done under Chief Jackson's watch. We started the process of having a civilian review board when Chief Jackson was still there. These are all things that we started long before they came in and said, you have to do it. Now we have to pay, out of citizens' tax dollars, $300,000 a year for some federal monitor to sit there and quarterly basically just tell the judge, yeah, they're doing everything they said they were going to do anyway.
How do you get that job?
Tell me about it. And, that's tax dollars that should be going to help pay our police officers better, should be help to improve law enforcement in our community, help raise the pay, help invest in our community policing. These are things that, unfortunately, the consent decree is the negative side of the consent decree.
Which you warned about, right?
Yeah, which hopefully in the next couple of years we'll be out of. Once we're into full compliance for 2 years, they'll release us.
Mayor Knowles, I wish we had more time. We've kind of run out of time for this hour. I appreciate you coming in. Mayor James Knowles from Ferguson, former Chief Tom Jackson, Policing Ferguson, Policing America. It's available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all that. You're going to have to write a book too, Mayor. You're next, right?
Got to stop having kids first.
Have a little time on your hands, right? That's right. All right, guys, thanks so much.
Fun. Thanks, Mark.
I appreciate your time today. We got to get to a break. 314-969-9797. We'll get to your phone calls and much more in the next hour of the Marc Cox Show.